He's extreme. He's intense. All of these, while their expertise changed and their industries changed, the thing that stayed consistent was their personality. And that's something that we all have going for us. They come for the skills and the knowledge and the know-how, but they stay because of the relationship.
Right.
They stay because you've become a consistent and valuable voice in their life.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University. We have tried to do this a couple times, but there were some technical issues. We have a very special guest today who Alan and I had the pleasure of meeting whilst in Colorado. And not only did he blow us away with his speaking ability, but a lot of the lessons he taught was just super valuable. And Alan and I left there saying we absolutely have to interview this man. We are sitting down with the one and only Mike Kim. Mike, what's going on, my friend?
Guys, it's awesome to be here. Thank you for having me. And for those listening, hope to be of some help to you all today.
That is always the goal, Mike. I'm sure you will. So you wrote a book that I have here called You Are the Brand. It's all about personal branding and marketing and all of that. What does that mean? What does You Are the Brand mean to somebody out there who wants to start a personal brand?
Well, first, the personal brand, we already all have one, and so my point in the book is that you might as well be more intentional about it. If we think about what a personal brand is, we see all these folks on Instagram, YouTube, even celebrities. I just heard this the other day on ESPN. I was watching some stuff on football, and they were like, Tom Brady is the top personal brand jersey. And they use that terminology on ESPN. What they mean by that is you've got a person, he or she has stuff or things associated with them, and they've become, in essence, an identity, right? And that's what branding is all about. It's always been about identity. Hundreds of years ago, when farmers used to burn a brand literally into the hide of their livestock, branding's always been about identity. Now, when we look at what social media and podcasts and outlets like this have allowed us to do, they've allowed the everyman and the everywoman to become public figures in our own right, and it's more than just what we say. Our personal brand surely entails our ideas, our expertise, our reputation, but also our personality. It's those four things that make up our identity, which is a public-facing identity. There are aspects of us that are not always shown online, and rightfully so, and whatnot. But a brand is just always been about identity, and a personal brand's extended to include those four things: your ideas, your expertise, your reputation, your personality.
I like how scientific you are with breaking this down, and our listeners are going to love that too. So I have 5 main things written down here. The very first one just says branding, and what I want to ask you is, whenever I find someone in a particular level of expertise, I always want to ask them what surprised you most about branding that you did not know, that most people, quite frankly, don't know. Like, what's the big no or yes, for lack of better phrasing, in branding that you didn't expect? And just an example to preface this question, in the fitness industry, what you wouldn't know if you weren't in the fitness industry is that when you compete, if you look healthy backstage, you're actually going to lose on stage. And you wouldn't know that unless you have competed in fitness shows. So what don't our listeners know that you also didn't know until you went down this rabbit hole?
I think the fact that you can just highlight 2 to 3 aspects of your personality and who you are and really have a brand. It doesn't have to be every part of you. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be disingenuous, but let me give you an example as well, Alan. Yeah. I grew up an 80s kid. I watched a lot of professional wrestling, Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man, all these guys. And I just loved it. And love him or hate him, Vince McMahon, the founder of the WWE, I think is one of the greatest storytellers of our generation. And he took this phenomenon, which we all know is staged. It's not real. They're not really fighting. It's a performance.
Wait,
right?
They're not fighting?
They're not fighting. But I mean, some of the chair shots are real. When you throw some guy off a steel cage onto a table, that hurts.
Yeah.
But they determine the winner, and they've gone through these scripts and whatnot. And what they do, because he brought this into the advent of television, right? This is where it started getting national exposure. And what they used to do, and they still do in the WWE and these other professional wrestling networks, is that they would sit a guy down or gal down, and they would ask them or try to find out stuff about their life, from their past, and they would magnify that aspect of them by like 100, and they turn him or her into a character, and that was their gimmick or their brand, their identity. And okay, you used to work in corrections and as a corrections officer, you're this big burly guy with these, this big strong looking guy. We're going to give you a pair of aviator sunglasses, dress you up in a cop uniform, and call you the big boss man. And you're going to run into the ring and you're going to boss people around. They took one aspect of this guy's character and they blew it up. Hulk Hogan. It's just his real name is not. It's Terry. It's not like Hulk. It's not like, but the guy had blonde hair, beach blonde hair, big dude. And they're like, where are you from or where do you hang out? And, California. All right. Turn everything red and yellow. And they would just take an aspect of his personality and blow it up by 100. Right. And they became these characters. And that's what's happening to all of us who have social media accounts today. Some are more intentional about it than others. But in the eyes of the folks who follow us, whether they are followers, subscribers, or just friends and family, we have a very clear online identity. And that's like our personal brand. But it's not everything about us. It's just slivers of it. And that's, I think, one of the things that really surprised me as I went down this journey.
Mike, one of the things you said in Colorado, and I love tactics. I'm just a tactical human being. That's just the way I'm wired. Was when you look at somebody's Instagram feed, you should know exactly what they do in the first 3 and then the first 9. Can you go into, because Mike, I like following you because you post a lot of stuff that's like, yeah, Mike would post that. It's like, it's on brand with you. And I notice a lot of people don't do that. Can you talk about the importance of particularly social media and how you go about doing it?
Yeah. So if you think about an Instagram account, when you find somebody and you log right in and click on their profile, you see their headshot, you see some of the, short bio copy, and then you see like the top 3 photos. And if that's on point, if you like what you've read and the top 3 photos look somewhat intriguing, and this all happens in like a millisecond, right? Very quickly. You take your thumb, you scroll up once, and that takes you to the first 9 photos. And so I call it the rule of the 9. I just made this up, and it just helped guide my Instagram content because last time I checked, guys, I'm not as ripped as you guys. I don't have this fitness content, and I'm not a cute girl wearing yoga pants or anything. I'm not a visual brand. So I was always like, man, I'm going to struggle on Instagram. I better figure this out. And so I started to paint a picture on Instagram, for example, of my life as both a speaker, a coach, but also a digital nomad. It's to show photos of me traveling, enjoying my family, enjoying the freedom that my work has afforded me. And so what I want someone to see when they see those first 9 photos, they swipe up, they'll see speaker, author, whatnot. But when they swipe up, I want them to see at least one photo of me speaking or coaching. And I want them to see one photo of a quote or something related to my book. And I want them to see one photo of something related to my lifestyle. Hanging out with my family, hanging out with friends, or traveling, right? And this is a very subtle thing, but that's intention. That is forethought. And I don't have all my posts planned out or anything like that, but for the by and large, that's like the general rule that I follow. And even that can really help. And people will say over time, just like you guys said, that looks like something Mike would post. That definitely looks like something he would post. And it feels real and it feels organic. Even though there's repetitive types of posts, there are quote cards, there are lifestyle posts, whatnot. It feels like you get just enough of Mike, 2-3 aspects of his character. Oh, he seems like a relatable guy.
Right. Is relatability the goal? What's the strategy around? Because I was on a podcast earlier. It's called The Technology Alchemist, and he was talking about niching. And he asked me, how does an early entrepreneur niche themselves? And I was basically saying this quote that I've been saying lately is no one goes to Coca-Cola to get their car fixed. Coca-Cola is a soft drink company, and everyone knows that because they've been around for 100 years. And they stayed there. And so I think that a lot of people have resistance to this idea of being pigeonholed. And I think it holds them back because whether it's Meryl Streep or Taylor Swift, like we know them for one thing. Like Meryl Streep, we know as an actress. Taylor Swift, we know as a singer, country singer. It's like the world will know you for one thing, but that doesn't mean you can't be multifaceted. What is your take from your perspective on that? And how can we help our listeners realize that like all of us know the person in high school who was the biggest jock? Kevin and I went to the same high school, and I can say, what's the biggest jock in our high school? And we both would say John Scurzat. And so that's branding. And rest in peace, John Scurzat. But everyone has that biggest jock. So for our listeners who don't like this idea of like having to pigeonhole themselves, what would you say the benefits are to actually doing that, at least in the social media world?
Well, here's how I see it. This is a very good question. It's very nuanced in its answer. The first thing I would say is it depends on the stage of business that you're in. It depends on the stage of, or like the size or the impact of the footprint that you have in the market. If a lot of people don't really know you, it's not going to hurt you if you pivot your brand, even drastically. If you're just starting out and people don't really know you, it's not going to be that drastic of a change. Now, on the flip side of that, if you don't niche down, you're not really going to get a lot of traction, right? So when someone says that to me and they say, hey, I'm interested in 5 different things, and I'm not really sure what to focus on, where do I start? Or, oh my gosh, I feel so paralyzed I can't share anything. And I say to them kindly but directly, no one's paying attention to you anyway right now. This is actually a good time for you to experiment and see if you can stick with 1 or 2 things. On the flip side of that, and I'm going through this right now, guys, because I published a book earlier this year. A lot of people are finding me who I have no connection with other than because somebody passed a book on to them. And so what's happening to me is the market is confining me.
Right.
And because I've done something that made a big footprint in my particular market. So they're starting to confine and they're starting to label me. So if I kick against the goats and try to resist that, I'm going to be fighting an uphill battle. What's smarter for me to do right now is to own how they're labeling me, build, like you said, Alan, that approachability and that relevance to them, and then have them connect and follow me onto other things. Now, let me give you a concrete example because, Kevin, you like tactics, right?
Yes.
So I was coaching this guy named Chris, brilliant guy, does quite a bit of business coaching. He's also a fitness enthusiast. He loves real estate investing. He's really into cryptocurrency, and he's a productivity geek. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Mike, I love all 5 of these things. I don't know how to work them into my brand. I want to talk about all of them all the time. So I said to him, well, what do people know you as primarily online? He said, well, a business coach. And that it's going well for you. He's like, yes, it's going well for you. I was like, okay. And I know those of you who are listening can't see me doing this. You'll see those are on video. You see me do this. So I said, let's just pretend like we're taking all 5 of these things and stacking them on top of each other. It's just like, a stack of chips, right? So on the bottom, the first chip is that you're a business coach. And second, you like to talk about working out. And the third chip is you like to talk about real estate, cryptocurrency, and productivity. Okay. Here's what I want you to do, Chris. I want you to turn this on its side. Because right now, you are a business coach, and look at those other 4 things as if those are phases or identities that you're going to step into as time passes. We're going to make this a timeline rather than a vertical stack. So what you can do is, as a business coach, you can pull from the future, which is when you want to start talking more about real estate and crypto and all these other things, and you can bring in stories of how you've gleaned lessons from your interests in these other things and use them to help your clients and use them to help you help your clients attain breakthrough. You might say something like, I'm a business coach, and when I work with small business owners, one of the principles I really talk to them about is how to see potential in situations that look bleak and dark and distressed. And I've learned this because of my passion for real estate investing. I own something like 24 properties in the Tampa Bay area. That's where he lives. And one thing I've learned as I drive through the neighborhoods is to see the potential of what could possibly happen in this neighborhood and in this investment property? And that's what I ask my clients to do. And if he shared that story on Instagram or a podcast or whatnot, even in a sales pitch, he would, it's not just about the client, Chris, would scratch that itch that he feels so bad to want to talk about real estate or crypto or working out or whatever. And you'd be able to connect it to business as a business coach right now. And that's just a real simple way that I phrase it for people who are multi-passionate. Own the role now, borrow things from the future role you may or may not step into, but make them and connect them, make them relevant to what you do now. I hope that helps. I hope that's a long-winded answer. I hope that helps.
It does help, Mike. Appreciate it.
Mike, you're a podcaster. Obviously, we're podcasters. I'm a podcast coach. So one of the things I come across quite often is people saying like, well, Joe Rogan does it. John Lee Dumas does it. And I have to get very honest and straightforward. And this is something you talked about. Joe Rogan is in the land of whatever I want. Joe Rogan can do whatever he wants and he's going to succeed. Can you talk about the value of focus, the importance of that, the land of whatever I want, and how to make sure that when you're either looking up to or modeling somebody, you're not modeling the level of influence they have, because a lot of people are playing wildly different games than even Alan and I and you. Can you just speak to that and the importance of understanding all of those facets?
Yeah. So this is something that's right out of the book. It's like in the second chapter. I call it the path of the personal brand. And when we start out, especially when we're publishing content through a podcast, nobody's listening, right? We're like, my mom's not even listening. She doesn't even know what to do with a podcast app, let alone listen to it. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is like, what do I do with it? Everyone's telling me to niche down. Kevin's telling me to niche down. I was telling Mike, they're all telling me to niche down. And it feels constricting. Right? Just like I mentioned, talking about Chris. But a funny thing happens when we niche down. We focus, and it feels like we're going through this dark night of the soul. It's sort of like a valley because, again, nobody's listening. And we might have a few friends and family who will listen once in a while and whatnot. But the funny thing is that as you get more focused, you become like a radio station that's known for just playing one song or one type of music, right? We get that clarity. And we become known for one or two things. And if you get really good at those one or two things, you will start to attract other people who have larger platforms who want you to speak to their audience about those one or two things. The worst thing that you can ever say to somebody who invites you to speak to their audience is, I can speak about whatever you want. Because now you're giving them the burden of responsibility to figure things out for your benefit.
Right.
And that doesn't work. People will just say hard pass. You clearly don't know what you want to do. But if you do have clarity, one influencer will call you and you will speak to their audience, and a couple of those folks will continue to follow you. And then another influential person may see that, oh, you were on his or her podcast? Why don't you come on mine? And the process repeats itself. And all the while, you're just sort of you're gathering small portions of these bigger audiences that you've been in front of, and they become your fans. They become your followers. They become your tribe. And as time passes, some of those people will build such a strong rapport with you that you could completely pivot into a new industry or niche, and they will follow you no matter what. And if enough of those people do that and can support you financially, of course, you end up in this magical place called the land of whatever I want.
Hey everyone, I'm Helen Baker from Melbourne, Australia. I'm an entrepreneur and a client of Alan's from Next Level University. I've had many business coaches in the past, and I can honestly say that Alan is seriously next level, and excuse the pun, but he has this unique ability to help you find a solution to your business problems using his intellect and his business modeling and his genuine, heartfelt desire to help you achieve your goals. I can be vulnerable with Alan. I can share anything and feel comfortable in his presence, knowing that at the end of our coaching sessions, I feel empowered to do incredible things. So if you're looking for a business coach, I highly recommend Alan, because his advice and his ability to coach you will be instrumental in achieving your success.
Joe Rogan is a great example of that. People forget that dude started out as the host of Fear Factor.
Yep.
What in the world? Well, what happened with Fear Factor? A lot of folks saw him. We were younger. I remember when Fear Factor came out. I thought that show was disgusting, but I couldn't stop watching. And Joe was the host, right? Joe was the host. And this was an edgy show. It was kind of gross, right? It'll freak you out. And then he goes into UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship, which is also edgy. Now, they're not throwing cockroaches on top of each other, but it's edgy. And I feel like Joe is a trusted guide to this. Okay, and he works out, and he's really into fighting and training. He's talking about this, and that's really cool. So all these guys are watching UFC. Not every man watches UFC. Not every gal watches UFC, but enough of them watched a lot of UFC with Joe hosting that when he started a podcast, or they heard he had a podcast, they're like, oh, Joe talks about other things? Let me go listen to him over there. Not everybody did that, but enough people did that the dude signed a 9-figure deal or whatever it was, 10-figure, whatever, with Spotify for his podcast.
Yeah, 100 million.
Yeah. It's the same thing with The Rock. I mentioned the WWE before. The Rock was insanely popular when I was in college. Most people don't know. He was a college football player at University of Miami, never made the NFL. That was his dream. And he says till this day, thank God my dreams didn't come true. He never made the NFL. He went into the WWE. He was booed out of the arena. People thought he sucked, but he worked on his game, and he eventually became one of the biggest wrestling stars in history. And he started landing movie deals. Here's the funny thing. A lot of my friends who grew up watching The Rock when we were in college did not like that he started making movies. But enough of us did. Enough wrestling fans did that he was able to completely leave wrestling and become, the world's biggest action star now. And he can do whatever he wants. I'll close with this with The Rock. How odd is it that this dude can sell Under Armour fitness gear and also sell tequila on the other hand? I mean, these are like incongruous brands, right? He's like, let me tell you to work out and go ahead and drink a bunch of my tequila. But he can do whatever the frick he wants, right? Hilarious. So, but it took 25 years.
Right, exactly.
And that's what people don't understand. It takes a long, long time.
So, Kevin, I have written down here the value of focus too. So I'm so glad that you asked that, Kev. And I think, you specialize and you get known for one thing and then you can pivot, but you have to have that value of focus. So, Mike, how important is it to play the long game in branding? I mean, The Rock, 25 years, Joe Rogan, another, 25 years, really. I don't know when he started Fear Factor, but he was also a comedian as well for all
That's
of
right.
that.
And he was an actor too. He was on Spin City back in the day.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we see Joe Rogan now, and we see the $100 million Spotify podcast deal, but we don't see the 25 years it took. I'll never forget when Kevin and I were in Lowell, Massachusetts, at UMass Lowell, and we were watching Oprah Winfrey speak. And she said something crazy, like 30 years on the Oprah show, I believe. And she never missed a single episode. She never got sick. She never canceled. She never showed up late. Like I think it was something crazy, like 30 or 20, at minimum 20 years straight, never missing. It's like I told Kevin, that's why she's Oprah. That consistency. So, Mike, in terms of branding, I think consistency is critical. What's your perspective on playing the long game when it comes to personal branding?
Yeah, this is a great workout quote too, right? But consistency is often greater than intensity.
Oh, for sure.
And you can go into the gym, or you can try to launch a podcast and go hard for 7 episodes. And if you ghost your audience for 3 months, you're not getting anywhere, just like you wouldn't at the gym if you did it that way, right? With branding, now we live in an attention economy. We are not cows that have a mark burned into our hide anymore. It erases, it dilutes, people forget. And that's why the consistency is so much more important. Now, I will say the thing about Joe Rogan and Oprah and The Rock and some of these other folks we've talked about who can do whatever they want, their ideas changed. Even their expertise changed, right? The Rock was a football player who became a professional wrestler and then an actor. Those are not the same disciplines. Not everybody can do all three of those things. So his expertise pivoted over time. But what was consistent through his whole career? What was consistent through his entire public life? His reputation and for sure his personality. You know, you tune into The Rock, you see The Rock on Instagram, you know you're going to get some funny stuff or in your face, like you better hit the gym, slug type of stuff, right? I mean, he is a hustler. He works hard. Like you kind of know what you're going to get. And that's an extension of his personality. It's the same with Oprah. You know what you're going to get. She's going to be warm. She's going to be a comedy. She won't be afraid to get in your face if it's something important or controversial, but you know what you're going to get, right? She's going to be inspirational. She's going to be uplifting. Right, Joe Rogan's just going to be a train wreck. He's going to be hilarious. And people are going to him for that kind of thing. He's extreme. He's intense. And so all of these, while their expertise changed and their industries changed, the thing that stayed consistent was their personality. And that's something that we all have going for us. Look, I know that at the end of the day, you guys are like, I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked if one day you just stopped podcasting and you stopped working out. I just know that when you guys pop up on my feed, I know I'm going to get something really good. I'm going to get something super motivational. I'm going to get super inspirational. And I'm going to be like, okay, I'm feeling like dumpy today. I saw that post, dude. I'm fired up. I'm going to the gym. If Alan's there, I'm going to the gym. Right. And over time, consistently over time, it's just like that radio station, consistency.
I appreciate that, Mike. And honestly, Kev, you and I could be more intentional about this. Because you're right. We're never going to stop podcasting. We're never going to stop working out. And I think we should just lean into that more, honestly.
Yeah. You know, I'm in.
This is good.
Mike, and I want to do we have a couple, Mike? I know we were supposed to be off in half. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
I just timer, Kev. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know I did. We went through a rebrand probably 200 or 300 episodes ago. We used to be the Hyper Conscious Podcast. Nobody knows what the hell that is. Evan Carmichael yelled at us, told us to change the name, so we did. Right now, Mike, I'm a little bit nervous. Straight, like I want to be honest and transparent. 2 years ago, we wouldn't have done this interview, but I told a client earlier, I said, we're having Mike Kim on to talk about branding and to talk about marketing. We're not going to talk about relationships. We're not going to talk about productivity. Like we're here to talk about marketing. What would you say to somebody in branding? What would you say to somebody who really wants to shift their image, to shift their content? Your podcast used to be called Up and to the Right, right? Back in the day. What do you say to somebody who's fearful of losing their audience or transitioning from one spot to another? Like, how do they work through that?
I think, well, it's funny that you talk about relationships because I am going to talk about relationships. One of the things I say in marketing is that marketing is not about closing a sale. It's about opening a relationship. Mm-hmm. And as you pivot and as you shift focus, again, those folks who have been with you, they come for the advice. Let me see if I could phrase this right. They come for the skills and the knowledge and the know-how, but they stay because of the relationship. Right. They stay because you've become a consistent and valuable voice in their life. And they will follow you. Many of those folks will follow you into almost anything that you get into. They want to be part of your journey. If anything, that's the biggest lesson I learned this past year. You know, I wrote and launched my first book. Then we launched a coaching program. That was a high ticket program after that. And I found that there were like several hundred people to about 1,000 people, almost about 1,000 people who they're just along for the ride. They're like, anything you need. And it goes back to that famous article, but gosh, more than 12 years ago, probably 1,000 true fans.
Yeah.
You know, you have 1,000 true fans. They will follow you through any and all iterations. Guys, I cannot tell you how many people are interested in my dating life. My God. And I'm like, what's that have to do with business? But they just want to know. You know, people, I've become this micro celebrity or this person that, you know, they find entertaining and valuable to have in their life. Now, as you rebrand the show, as I'm going through a rebrand with my show right now, I'm changing it. I'm changing the title to match my book title. Right. And it's like, we just want to see what he's doing next. We just want to see what she's doing next. Those are the people who are really, really with you. And if you carry them into the next season, they will go out and be your evangelists in many ways. They will bring others to you. They will say, there are a lot of podcast coaches out there. There are a lot of marketing agencies out there, but this is the guy you need to talk to.
Yeah.
This is the person who helped me, and I know he can help you. And get enough people talking like that, you've got your audience, you've got your people, you've got your tribe.
So powerful. I really, really appreciate this. We have time for one more?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know we're up and over. I know we had you till 2, but okay. So there's 5 things I wrote down. One was determine who you are not. One was branding. One was the no-nos. One was the value of focus, and then your point of view, which is basically like, what breaks your heart, what pisses you off, and what's the problem you solve. I want to just, because this is my last question, I want to do determining who you are not. I think we're born naked, scared, and ignorant. I think we go explore. I think we figure out who we are by figuring out who we are not. And that's a famous Matthew McConaughey Houston commencement speech that talks about this. And I actually just bought his book. It's behind me. But I think that a lot of people don't know who they're not. And so can you talk to our listeners and to Kevin and I about like understanding that a lot of figuring out who you actually are is actually getting honest with yourself about who you really just aren't. Like, listen, I don't care about cars. I'm never gonna. Kevin's gonna have 12 different cars in his big mansion. I couldn't pretend to give an F. Honestly, I could try, and I have tried. It doesn't matter to me. So can you talk to our listeners about determining who you are not and how important that is, because otherwise you're going to be too scattered in general?
Yeah, I think we have a hard time as adults. We get conditioned to not say no. And we don't figure out what we don't like. Alan, you mentioned those questions. What pisses you off? What breaks your heart? I always lead with the what pisses you off, because people are throwing out like, what? I'm allowed to be ticked off about something? I'm allowed to disagree with something? I just had my nephews over my place here in New York over the weekend, and they're now 6 and 4. And the 4-year-old, such a cute kid. He was always so cute until this weekend. My gosh, he's a little terrorist. He's like, I don't want this. I don't want that. And I'm like, what happened to him? He used to be such a kind kid. And my sister said, ferocious force. That's when they start learning how to really say no. And I wonder how many of us, as we grow up, that becomes diluted, right? Because then people start to condition us, our family, our friends, society as a whole starts to condition us. I'm Korean American. I was born in California, but all my life when I was growing up, guys, I was told you have to be a lawyer, a doctor, or a businessman. That's it, man. That's it. You got 3 choices in life. I was like, I don't want to do any of them. I guess I'm screwed. I ended up in business, but not what they would typically think, right? And I think that the self-awareness piece, if we could all just get even 2 degrees more self-aware, like humanity as a whole, life would improve exponentially. And yet, that's the hard work, right? That's hard work. I believe, though, that for those of us who are entrepreneurs, or those of you who are listening who are aspiring to become an entrepreneur, and this is one of the big principles in the book, is don't become an identity that isn't really an extension of you. Be the brand. Don't just build it. Become it. Become the person that you're trying to sell to people. Become the person that you are saying to people that you are. And I found that every critical moment in my life, when I made a different decision as to the direction my life would go, Alan, it was always because of friction. Friction moves you forward. A tire on a slippery road is not going to move you anywhere. So friction's a good thing. And I pay attention. Of course, I learned to manage energy and kind of play out how I'm feeling. But if I'm finding that I'm getting frustrated with something, or my body is speaking to me in a different way, I'm like, I should not keep doing this. There's got to be something underneath this where there's a new path forward. And it doesn't mean I give up on the path that I'm on, but I think you start to learn and discern what is friction that is constructive and what is friction that is just like, this is not good for your health. This is not good for your soul. I'm going through that right now. just end of the year, a busy year. And I'm like opening my laptop and my back is starting to tighten up. And I'm like, I've got to meditate like 3 times as long as I normally do. And I'm like, I wonder what my soul is telling me. I wonder what my body's telling me. There's friction for me keeping on doing things the way that I've been doing them. There's got to be a new path forward. And to be honest, I'll go on record here. I don't know if I'll teach marketing in 2 years or 3 years. Who knows? Maybe this is the sign of that. Right. Maybe I would just become a memoirist or something, or live in a cabin in the woods. Who knows? But that openness, this is what I would say to all of us, to fight all the pain and all this, you've got to fight to stay open. That's the fight that we're in. The fight to just stay open. And staying open is hard work. Spiritually open is hard work. Emotionally open, relationally open is hard work. I'm not much a Bible guy anymore, but I'll draw this one parallel. In one of the early books, I forget which one, there's this battle, and Moses, the long gray-haired bearded guy, he's supposed to go up onto a mountaintop, and as long as his hands are raised and he's open, his side wins. His side is winning. And he couldn't keep his arms up like this. I guess he didn't do a lot of shoulder presses, I guess, guys, right? He was weak in the anterior delt, right? And so he had to have his assistant and his brother, Aaron, hold up his hands for him. Because as long as his hands were up, the story goes, God allowed his side to win. And that right there is a picture to me that staying open is a full-time job. Staying open, you have to have vigilance over your soul. And when there is friction, stay open, see what kind of friction it is, and you will learn and you will see the path forward.
Powerful. Last question before we talk about the book, Mike.
Yeah.
What are you as a brand? Obviously a speaker, a podcaster, author, consultant, all those things. But what is your brand? What is the Mike Kim brand?
I would say that people think I make difficult things simple, and that I am courageously vulnerable, like courageously authentic. Like they like that about me, and that just works for me. That's my personality. That's really how I see the world. That's how I operate in the world. I'm like, this is so hard. Let me make this easy. Is this how I understand it? And there are very few things, if ever, that I'll shy away from talking about in my own life. I think that gives people courage.
Is there anything that you feel like you could be even more authentic on?
No, I've talked about everything. When people ask certain questions, I'm like, okay, yeah, that came out. Okay, yeah, you don't want to talk about unhealthy ways that I cope with stress or anything like dating life, whatever. It'll just all come out. And I think that's one of the things that I do love about social media and about podcasts and about how new media has allowed us all to have these mini platforms, is that it's making these kinds of conversations more normal. Right. It's normalizing it. When Joe Rogan or some guy we find is a famous person can come online and talk about, depression or whatnot, that gives so many people permission.
Yeah.
And that's where I strive to stay. I really do. I strive to stay there on that edge.
That's a really important distinction, and we should all, be grateful for the fact that we're, when we're vulnerable, it will help give other people permission. And we would have needed that in younger versions of ourselves for sure. No question.
For sure.
So thank you, Mike. This was fire. We really appreciate it.
Long overdue. Thoroughly enjoyed this. Mike, where can people, so honestly, I read this. I mean, you gave so much of this during your presentation in Colorado.
Yeah.
Alan and I got to the airport. I couldn't sleep. We had a couple hours before our bus came. So I was reading this again. Awesome book. Like such a great book, such a great read.
Yeah.
So many tactics, but deeper understandings as well. Where can people find that, and what can they expect from You Are the Brand?
Yeah, go grab it on Amazon. That's probably the best way to do it. They're masters at shipping. And they got the Kindle and all the deal. What you can expect from this book is actionable content, easy to read, and simple. A few funny stories. Yeah. That's again, I try to make difficult things simple and digestible. I do really feel the simpler your tools, the more likely you're going to use them. And I hope that this book, for anyone who picks it up, becomes a tool in your tool belt as you continue to build your personal brand. And if so inclined, a business around your personal brand, because it's a great way to make an impact in the world and build a life that's very, very fulfilling.
No one ever had regrets of, oh, I wish I had read less books. This book is simple, and even just reading it earlier today for prepping for this interview, it's like Kevin and I are going to be more intentional about our personal brand. The future is digital. I looked this up 3 weeks ago. 4.66 billion people are online, and you do have a future in the digital space. And this book is very relevant, probably more relevant than people realize. So thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. And thank you for adding so much value to our listeners.
Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Next Level Nation, follow Mike. He is the man. Buy the book, buy all the things. Mike, we appreciate you. We're grateful for your time. And it was a pleasure, genuine pleasure, getting to meet you, getting to see you speak, and getting to know you. So we are grateful for you, Mike.
Grateful to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you,
welcome.
Mike. Talk soon.
Bye.